This happened years ago, but it is still something that sticks with me. This all happened like a sequence. You never know if things are supposed to happen for a reason, or if some unknown outside force influences it. But first, a backstory. My friend, let's call her Jenny, was a cheery, happy-go-lucky young woman. She rode one of those crotch rocket bikes and loved riding it. Always up for new and exciting things, she took a job as a security guard for a casino I worked at. She was always that ray of sunshine that would bring you up if you were having a bad day. Even when she was feeling down, she always made it a point to make sure you were feeling better. After a year, she was promoted to a gaming officer. Not long after her promotion, she started acting funny. Not so much that people noticed it right away, but enough that I noticed it. She would come to work tired or come late, but never said why. I noticed her attitude change as well. She was more jumpy and cautious than normal. One day she came in 2 hours late. Her superior wasn't too happy. When she did come in, she looked worse for wear. She was unkempt, baggy red eyes, and jittery. When questioned by her superior, she put it as a late night out. When she came to the floor, she pulled me aside and asked to meet up after work. We met at Denny's, and she proceeded to tell me what was going on. She, as she put it, was having weird shit happen to her. It started subtlety at first. A chill here, a noise there. Nothing she couldn't explain away. But as time progressed, things got weirder. The chills got colder, the noises got louder and more frequent. Things were never where she left them. Then it started happening at work. Her desk was always rearranged from how she left it. She thought that someone was messing with her, even voicing her concern, but nobody ever came forward. When she was walking the floor, she would feel a tap on her shoulder or a tug on her shirt with nobody around. When she would walk to her office, which was located near the uniform room in a less trafficked area of the building, she always heard footsteps in line with hers, as if someone was walking right behind her. She was afraid to use the restrooms as well if no one was with her. It was there one day, she said. She got scared real bad. Answering the call of nature, she had just begun when, she said, there was a single light knock on the stall door. She had announced herself in the stall when someone knocked again, this time 2 of them, louder than the first. She had said she was using it and was in the middle of asking us to use another when the door began to rattle, as if someone was jiggling the handle. Then it stopped. She said she was about to get up when, to her horror, the sliding lock began to slowly move, unlocking itself. Jenny said she flung the door open. No one was there. When she got out of the stall, no one was in there. She was about to walk out when, turning toward the stalls, she said she saw a dark mass, humanoid-looking, peeking out behind the furthest stall. She said she has seen it often since. The day she was really late, she said she was awoken from her sleep. It was night, her room was dark, and she couldn't speak nor move. She tried to, she told me, but couldn't, and she had a dreaded feeling like she wasn't alone. The only thing she could move was her eyes, she recalled, and she happened to look up with them, seeing this humanoid mass looking right down at her, a faint glow where eyes would be. She said she closed her eyes and was able to scream, finally gaining control of her body. She jumped out of bed and tried to turn on the light near her bed, but it wouldn't work. The mass then started to come toward her, blocking her bedroom door. She said she ran into the closet and shut it. The light in the closet worked. She said she was afraid of opening the door. She heard it moving around the room. She fell asleep in there, not waking till late in the morning. The last week of her life, she stayed with me. Despite the odd occurrence at work, nothing ever happened at my place. She was peaceful. She was sleeping and eating again, and on her days off, she reported nothing happening. The day she died was one of the strangest and scariest days of my life. It started with me going in like normal. I came in at 8, and Jenny came in an hour later. Things were pretty normal, and at 12 we went to lunch. During lunch, she told me she was going to go back to her place. The last week was pretty good, and she hoped that whatever it was had finally left her alone. After that, we went back to our posts. About half an hour after lunch, my supervisor calls me in the office and says one of the swing shift people called out and asked if I could pull a double. If I agreed, I could take the next day off or come in and get the overtime. So I agreed. At around the same time, Jenny was asked to stay a few hours more as one of her co-workers had suddenly gotten ill in the stomach and had to go. So she agreed. After that, I got the strangest feeling like I was being watched. Couldn't explain it. I felt someone was staring at me in empty parts of the floor. Jenny told me she started to feel like a weight was being lifted off her, but she also felt like I was in trouble somehow. When Jenny was getting ready to end her shift at 11 in the evening that night, I took my final break to say goodbye, as I was getting out an hour after her. She said she felt free in what seemed like forever. She wanted to enjoy her ride home. She said she would text me when she made it. We hugged and I saw her off for what would be the last time. Needing to get back on the floor, I had the call of nature beckoning me. I ran in and got the nearest urinal. Relieved, I washed my hands and started to leave when a light, soft knock came from the direction of the stalls. There, peeking out from the farthest stall, was a black mass, humanoid-looking with a soft glow where the eyes should be. I blinked and it was gone. I stood frozen there, literally trying to rationalize if I saw something or not. I looked at the time on my phone. 20 minutes had passed since Jenny left. I looked up and there it was again, only this time I got this really bad feeling that something was wrong and I bolted out of there. My sister broke the news to me that morning. Her boyfriend was an EMT that responded to an accident call. Being the one that took the call, he was shocked to find her off the road, about 40 feet to be exact, dead with a broken neck. She had hit the safeguard, this metal piece that curved with the road. He thought it weird that she would have landed 40 feet away, seeing that the speed limit at the turn was only 20, and that later it was determined that she hit it going 10 miles an hour. No alcohol nor drugs were found in her system, so they thought that she probably fell asleep, and when she hit, she landed neck first and slid to a halt. Though I was later told by my sister's boyfriend that when he got there, he didn't see anything that looked like she slid. The ground, he remembered, was undisturbed. This has haunted me for a while now. A few weeks ago, I dreamed Jenny was talking to me. I couldn't hear her, and she had this blank, almost emotionless expression. She then points behind me, and there it is, the thing I saw the day my friend died. One more thing I forgot to mention. When a time of death was given, it was around 11:20 p.m., about the same time I saw that fucking thing. When I was little, I always had an overactive imagination, had frequent nightmares, and always thought I saw things going on during the night. I told my mom that every night, as I was trying to get to sleep, my bedroom door would shake. Not very obviously, but just slightly. I always slept with my door slightly ajar, and outside of my door I had my own staircase because my bedroom was in the attic. I would lay in my bed and just watch the door kind of vibrate and shake really quickly. I'd go and tell her, and she would come up to my room and have a look for herself. Only every time she did, the door would have stopped shaking. It irritated the hell out of me, and I was determined to prove to her that I wasn't lying. Each night, as soon as it started to shake, I would sprint down the stairs and tell my mom to come quick. It didn't matter how quickly I did it. The door would always stop by the time she had got there, as if it was trying to anger me. In the end, I gave up. If the door wanted to shake, then it could go ahead. I tried my best to block it out, but I couldn't. It got to the point where I would dread going to bed because of the stupid door. I would examine it during the day to see if there was something causing the shaking, but I could see nothing that stood out. It was a complete mystery. One night, after many weeks of hellishly annoying shaking, the door began to shake more vigorously. I lay in bed with my covers pulled up almost over my eyes, scared stiff. Through the slight gap in the door where the hinges were, I could see something moving on the other side. I told myself it was my dog, but I knew that was ridiculous. My dog was white, whereas this thing seemed to resemble smoke. I would have run downstairs for my mom, but that would mean I would have to pass whatever was on the other side of the door. The next day I told her about it, and she just put it down to my imagination or me being tired. I was tired, that was true. I was tired because of the stupid door. The next night I watched the door again, and sure enough I could see the smoke through the gap. I decided to take action into my own hands, and I bought a scarecrow to put at the other side of my door. The scarecrow would scare away whatever was messing around outside of my bedroom. Scare was in the name. It was foolproof. I felt more relaxed knowing the scarecrow was outside, and for once I thought I was going to get a good night's sleep. No such luck. I was just dozing off when I heard a weird shuffling noise and then a gentle thud. I jerked wide awake, feeling my heart drop when I saw that the door was shaking again. I could no longer see the reassuring shape of the scarecrow on the other side of the door, and I realized that it must have been moved. The thud had been the scarecrow hitting the floor outside of my room, and now the smoke was back. I was in complete despair. If the scarecrow didn't work, then nothing would. I tried explaining this to my mom, and she actually seemed to believe me for the first time. She must have seen how concerned I was. Also, I was almost falling asleep at school due to lack of sleep. The whole thing had spiraled out of control. I felt like I was going mad. At first the thing had just been annoying, an inconvenience. Now I was beginning to feel threatened. How long would it be until the thing opened the door and entered my room? If it was capable of knocking over the scarecrow and shaking the door, then surely it was capable of opening it. And when it did open the door, what would it do to me? What did it want? Every day from then on, all I could think about was the fact that I didn't want to go to bed. I was sleep deprived and felt like the energy was being sucked out of me more and more each day. Mom had said numerous times that I could sleep in her room with her in order to try and get a good night's sleep, but I refused. I was almost 12 years old, and sleeping in her room would mean that I had let this thing win. As scared as I wasn't going to let whatever it was take over my life any more than it already had. My gran got a rosary for me. It didn't work. Nothing worked. My mom, the biggest skeptic in the world, even began burning sage around the house to try and cleanse it. Things got worse and worse. My school had called my mom several times expressing their concern. I had lost weight, I had dark circles under my eyes, and I barely ever participated in class. They wondered if I was having problems at home. They had called me into the office to ask if everything was okay, and each time I would say that it was. I could hardly tell my teachers that my bedroom door was shaking and the smoke behind it was driving me mad. One day I completely broke down. I told my mom that we had to move out. I couldn't keep living like this. She actually looked like she was considering it. I wasn't the happy, bubbly girl that I had been just a few short months ago anymore. I was miserable, nervous, and was struggling just to eat a meal without wanting to throw it all back up. Then one night it all stopped, just like that. The door didn't shake, the smoke wasn't there. That almost scared me more because that meant it was somewhere else. In my room, I didn't sleep for that whole night. The next night, nothing. The night after that, nothing. 3 weeks later, nothing. The thing on the other side of the door had disappeared without a trace. I slowly but surely began to sleep again. I began to enjoy school again, and finally I was eating normally. I became the girl that I used to be again. I think that it left because it had taken what it had needed from me. It had pushed me to breaking point and couldn't possibly take anything else from me. So it simply moved on. I have no idea where it went or why it came to me in the first place. This all happened around 10 years ago, and I no longer live at home. I haven't seen anything of the sort since I broke down and the thing left. We don't know why that thing chose me, or if it will ever come back. All we can do is hope with all of our might is that it doesn't. To this day, I have no idea what I saw. People I tell seem to not believe me, but I swear this is true. A little background before I get into it. I am a 29-year-old construction worker. Been doing it since high school. Metal framing and sheetrock mostly. I'm in decent shape. No history of mental disorders in my family. Only problem I have developed over the years is a mild case of tinnitus from being stubborn and refusing to wear ear protection. It comes during times of silence, like when I'm trying to sleep. So I try to keep the TV or a fan on to cancel out the ringing. Work was getting very slow where I lived, so I decided to move to Virginia. I was staying with a friend who got me a sweet gig with a local construction company on Norfolk Naval Base. Huge job. 5-story building, complete build-out from the ground up, good pay, not exactly close to where we were staying, but the drive wasn't bad as long as I made it in before morning traffic. Only thing wrong with the job was the foreman was a complete asshole, always talking down to us workers in that sort of passive-aggressive tone that made me want to punch him in his face. But as long as we stayed busy, he didn't bother with us for long. About 4 months into the job, I injured my right hand, sliced my middle finger on a piece of metal. The doctor stitching me up said it didn't hurt because I cut so deep it severed the nerves. The next day I had to file an injury report. My boss said he was going to put me on light duty and that I didn't have to do anything except sweep until my hand healed. I was all for it. Same pay for easy work. For the first week things were all right, but then it started getting boring. I mean, really boring. The days dragged on and I wondered why they didn't just pay me to stay home. So naturally I started wandering around checking out all the hallways, and there were plenty of hallways. Really long and gloomy looking when they were just gray brick all around. Some at the very top didn't even have temporary lighting, and would have been pitch black if it weren't for the huge window cutouts on each end letting in sunlight. I stayed away from those hallways. They creeped me out. One day I was feeling bored, so I decided to go walking around the 4th floor. Most of the work had been finished, so I had it all to myself. It was around that time I noticed my tinnitus was acting up worse than usual. I figured someone must have had a generator running or something, so I started moving towards the other end of the hallway. About 3/4 of the way, my ears start painfully ringing. I tried sticking my fingers in my ears and humming, which usually does the trick, but the ringing was so intense. I started feeling nauseous, and I fell over on my hands and knees. I was slapping my ears, trying to make the ringing stop. My eyes started watering at one point because I was slapping my head so hard. I got up on my knees, still covering my ears, trying to get to my feet so I could make it to the stairwell. But the ringing was so intense, every move I made sent my head spinning. Moving slow helped, but not much. As I turned around, I noticed someone standing at the other end of the hallway near one of the window cutouts. The sun behind him was so bright, all I could see was a silhouette. I started yelling, "Help! Help!" as loud as I could, but the guy didn't move. I thought maybe he had earplugs in and couldn't hear me, so I started moving towards him, slowly so my head wouldn't spin. As I got closer, I started noticing things I hadn't before. First, this guy was huge, like impossibly huge. His shoulders were really wide and high, almost like he was shrugging. His arms were long, hanging down past his waist, with really long fingers on each hand. I still couldn't make out any facial features because of the bright sun behind him, but as I started realizing this person wasn't normal, I slowly backed away. He just stood there looking right at me. I was almost to the stairs when this thing slowly cocks its head to the side, like a dog does when it's confused, and the ringing in my ears just goes crazy. It was extremely painful. At the time, I thought my ears were bleeding. I was pressing my hands into my ears and yelling, but it was so loud I couldn't even hear myself yell. I dropped back on my hands and knees and threw up on the floor until I was puking air. I looked up to see if this thing was coming after me, but I caught a last glimpse of it as it walked into a nearby room. The instant it disappeared around the corner, the ringing in my ears just stopped, like someone hit the mute button. Needless to say, I ran the fuck out of there and didn't look back. I stayed away from the fourth floor for the next couple months. I told a few people what I saw, but they only pretended to be interested. It was about 5 months after it happened when I decided to go back up there. I checked every room. If there were any signs of this thing, they were long gone. I still have tinnitus. There have been a few times when I'm laying in bed at night and the ringing gets painful, and I freak out and check every room in my apartment. But it never gets as bad as it was that day. I really hope it never does.